Today, we are asking a harder question. What if the advice that women have been given about money was never designed for us to win big?
And the idea that women, number one, are bad with money is just silly. And it goes hand in hand with, even simply women are bad at math. With the biggest transfer of wealth happening and coming into the hands of women, this fact that we're emotional is a superpower and now has become a relevant and extremely important part of the conversation. Money is emotional. I think the easiest way for anybody listening to change their own path with money is to start talking about it. Start asking the questions. Start allowing yourself, giving yourself the grace to be vulnerable.
The system created the conditions that look like risk aversion and then blamed women for the outcome. What does it actually look like to play a well-rigged game without pretending the game isn't rigged?
For the first time ever, at least in, certainly my lifetime, we have more resources at our fingertips than ever before. It used to be the barrier to entry may have been getting into the right colleges or, even going to college, or did your parents, expose you to these kind of conversations around money and opportunity at country clubs and you didn't get in? So how do you cross the narrative? None of that really, in my opinion, is a barrier to entry anymore because resources and information are everywhere. So I would say for any of us that, we need to acknowledge first that just because we want things to be fair and equal doesn't mean that they are. And we can all work hard to change that. But until then, do the research, figure out what it is you want, what the people that are living the life are investing in a way that you want to emulate, what are they doing? And unlike in prior generations, you don't need a college education or access to the golf course to do that. We can do it, but you've got to want it. And that's where, again, if we're in a rigged system, you still have to advocate for yourself. You still have to do the work. There is no, silver bullet or cheat code, but there is an easier way to get the information you need to get to that end result. So advocate for yourself, research what you're wanting, and ask the people that are doing what you want to do, how they did it and how they learned to do it. And then go out there and do it.
All right, what's up, dreamers and doers, and welcome to the Dope Living Podcast, where we build success that sustains you, not just look impressive on paper. I'm your host, Janee, and today we are doing something a little different. We are not here to tell you to open a savings account. We've done that before. We're not here to remind you to start investing early because you've heard that. We've heard it and we've talked about it a lot, and we know exactly what we need to do. But today we are asking a harder question. What if the advice that women have been given about money, the framing, the products, the language, the access was never designed for us to win big? It's a deep question. And here's what we know. Women are projected to control $34 trillion in wealth. Over that, that's just the US, by the way, by 2030. The wealth transfer is happening now through inheritance, through business ownership, through divorce. It's the largest shift in wealth to women in history. And yet, Oxford academic research published just last year found that the gender investment gap is not primarily about preference or risk appetite. It is about income, household size, and financial vulnerability to shocks. Structural realities, not personal failures. That is the gender investment gap that we see today. So we are here today not for the soft conversation, but for the real one. And my guest today is Michelle Taylor, the founder of Women in Wealth, a community she built to close the gap between where women are financially and where they deserve to be. With over a decade of experience in financial services, Michelle has seen the inside of the system and left the playbook behind to build something better and, I would venture to say, more meaningful. Welcome, Michelle, to the Dope Living Podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so excited to be here with you.
I'm really excited for this conversation because today we're going deeper, and you are the right person to have this conversation with. So, Michelle, I want to start with what I think is probably the most damaging narrative going on about women and investing in money. And that is, we've all heard it in some sort of way, that women are bad with money or too emotional to be in control of a lot of money. The Washington Post, though, just published a piece debunking that actual saying. And they call the three biggest money myths about women. And that one is actually the first one. The data completely contradicts it. And yet it still shapes how women feel about themselves financially. So from where you sit, having been inside financial services for over a decade, where did that narrative come from, and who does it serve?
It serves absolutely no one. And I wish that I knew exactly where it started, because I think then we could unpack it a little bit easier. But it's something that somehow is ingrained in us. And the idea that women, number one, are bad with money is just silly. And it goes hand in hand with, even simply women are bad at math. In fact, in my own life, I have a niece I'm really close to. She has expressed an interest in doing what I do and coming, to fight the good fight with women in wealth and helping women. And the first thing out of her mouth was, but I don't like math. And it's like, oh my goodness, but this isn't math. I mean, at its core, it's numbers, but why that narrative has been placed upon us, and it's something that we identify with, and then allow that to keep us out of the conversations, is such an opportunity for us to change the path forward. I also think that the fact that women are emotional is actually our superpower. So I don't know about you, but when it comes to money, there's nothing more emotional than that. Obviously the things that we care about and love and our families and our spouses and kids and all of that, of course. But what I mean is, it's really difficult to separate the emotion out of money when you're talking about how it is working for you personally. When, in this industry, there are very few of us that are women that are in the wealth management seat. When I first started, it was much less. Now I think we're approaching 20%, but still not quite there. And what I have found is that when women are talking about money, the emotional piece of it is what gets them dialed in and allows them to track something and let go of kind of some narratives like, you don't need that much, or who am I to want to be a millionaire, or the goals that we have that can be, that's unpacking a totally different part of the conversation. But I think when you're emotionally tying it to, I want to make an impact in this way. I want to make sure that my kids go to college and don't have to get student loans. I want to make sure that this charity that I care about so much, that I can leave an impact. When you tie the emotion into it, it almost is freeing and allows you to chase something. Additionally, men are more concerned about a rate of return. So I've sat across from many of the guys as well. And in my experience, a guy is more focused on a return than they are on the end result. And I think that women, it's the complete opposite. If I sit down with a woman and she says, these are the things I want to accomplish, just tell me that I can get there and I'll never outlive my money. Whether I need to get a 5% return or a 20% return, she doesn't care. She wants the result. And that's because it's emotional to her. Maybe the fact that women are emotional makes the boys feel uncomfortable because they approach it differently. But as you said, with the biggest transfer of wealth happening and coming into the hands of women, this fact that we're emotional is a superpower and now has become a relevant and extremely important part of the conversation. Money is emotional.
Yeah, definitely. And I love how you brought that to light in terms of men looking at, of course, that rate of return and women really looking at the end result and the goal and how can I ensure that everything can fit into that goal. And when you start to think about why women are doing so well, because the statistics are similar when it comes to women's ability to bring a return on investment in their business venture. And I imagine it's that same emotional way of thinking that helps to bring context to the reality and then ultimately bring better results. So I really love that you said that. And it's interesting because research shows what we're talking about, that kind of emotion and the things that have been framed negatively. It hasn't just been an external narrative, but women have now, not now, but over time have actually internalized a lot of that. Like you said, with, I'm just not good at math and connecting those dots. And that women are far more likely to answer I don't know on a financial questionnaire than men. We know that it's not lack of knowledge and it's not ignorance or anything. It's just decades of being told you don't belong in that conversation. So where would you start to undo that? Not just intellectually, but from a gut level as well.
Yeah. And just putting it into good practice. I think number one, women have been told that we are more conservative, that we are not risk takers, that we are, we are supposed to kind of fall behind and let other people tell us what to do. And while that may work for some people and there's no right or wrong answer, I think the quickest way that we can change it for the women that don't feel like that's in alignment is by changing the conversation. Mm-hmm. When we go to happy hour with a group of our girlfriends, we're not talking about the things that we've been told are taboo, money, politics, religion, because we're afraid of showing up in a way that is vulnerable. And I think that is truly when the conversations change. So, why we've been taught and believe now that it's not in good taste or in, having good manners to ask somebody, well, what are you investing in? How much of your income do you put away every month? Or, what in the world is private equity? It's something I hear, venture capital. Tell me about that. How do you and your husband approach finances? And I feel like people are intimidated to have the conversations, but truly that's the only way we change things. Just like with politics and religion, if you approach a conversation and the intent is to understand different perspectives and to learn and take something from it, everything changes. So I think the easiest way for anybody listening to change their own path with money is to start talking about it. Start asking the questions, start allowing yourself, giving yourself the grace to be vulnerable. If you hear something in a group setting that you don't understand, ask. I know I can speak for myself, and you would probably agree that if a friend asked you a question because they weren't sure, I don't know many people that are really quietly shaming that person. I think, again, that's a narrative we've told ourselves that we don't belong at the table. We don't belong in those conversations. We'll let those people deal with that. But that is actually what's keeping us behind. We talk about the gender gap, the pay gap, the wealth gap. And yes, there is some of that. And I think that we've done really good as a people to unwind some of that. But I think that where we can still do better is women need to kind of take charge and say, I'm glad that you all aren't subscribing to that anymore. And now how do I also help myself? And really, I don't care if somebody thinks that I don't fit at this conversation because I don't know the answer. I'm going to ask it and get what I need, and I'll find a table that I am welcome at. I think that's the easiest thing that we can do and well within our control.
That's right. What I find, at least when I have conversations, is that I'm one of the only people actually talking figures. So that's where I've gotten into the conversation. I will be very honest about how much this costs because I feel like there's a lot to learn about are we overpaying? Are we getting, are there things that we're not considering that can help us to save? And so now I'm getting to the point, and I'm the only one doing it, but I'm hoping that as I, have these conversations with just my peers, that I'm able to, just bring more open conversations so we all can help each other as we're going through just about everything in life at this point, getting hit with everything all at once,
Yeah.
So this part of the conversation I call the system that wasn't built for us. So here's something I do think about a lot. The financial world has labeled women risk averse, as you started to touch on. The label has been used to steer women towards lower yield, safer products, bonds, savings accounts, conservative funds. But a major study from Oxford Review of Financial Studies found something that reframes that quite a bit. Women don't invest less because they're more afraid. They invest less because they have lower incomes, larger households, and are more vulnerable to financial shocks. In other words, the system created the conditions that look like risk aversion and then blamed women for the outcome. When you hear something like that, and where you hear that, what goes through your mind?
Oh my gosh. So many things. Like, how are we falling for this? Number one. And number two, we have to stop taking something that someone else says and putting it on, or putting it on our purse and carrying it with us if it doesn't apply to us. And I think that is a prime example of how we're being told that this doesn't work for us and it's our fault that it doesn't. And instead of questioning that and saying, wait a minute, that's not true. And again, going back to having the conversations, we just try and outmaneuver it, when really it should be almost insulting that we are trying to be, or we're almost being duped into being kept where we're at.
Yeah. I mean, it really shocked me and put things in perspective, right? Because a lot of times, at least I catch myself playing this game. I'm calling it a game, but playing this game of like, okay, I know I need to be, or do I need to be okay with what I have and kind of play in my lane and what's good for where I'm at now? Or can I look, and I'm sure you went through it a lot in wealth management, you are literally rubbing shoulders with people that are of a completely different bracket. And you look at them and I'm like, well, I can get there. There's no reason why I can't employ the same strategies. Now, systematically, there are things that are holding us back, like we're offered lower salaries and things like that. So I just keep going back and forth of where does the fix get started,
Well, I think women have to now, they have to really be their own advocates, because, and that's where, again, I know I keep saying to have conversations, but if you're going into a job interview or a merit increase conversation, go in there prepared and go in there and pretend that you're approaching it like a guy would. You touched on this in the beginning, but women are, if a job posting comes across our path, we are not going to apply unless we hit 85% at least of the qualifications, where a guy needs like 30. And so I challenge, the people in my circle and clients, go into those kind of conversations with the confidence of that guy that only needed 30%. The worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to have to either deal with the no or negotiate for what you're worth. And that's just building a muscle anyway. So it's like those little things. Yes, the systems can be a little bit of a drag when we're running this race. But I think women are, again, if you're emotionally tied to, hey, this is why it's important because this is going to get me there quicker, then lean into that. Lean into it. We also feel, I think, so many instances that women show up and and feel like we've got to show up in the masculine. But then are we really changing what's happening around money? It's okay to show up and bring what makes you unique and ask for the things that you need to be seated at that table. And quite frankly, at different tables of people doing even more than the others are doing that you felt like you never belonged at anyway.
You talk about that muscle, and I want to spend a whole episode at some point on the negotiation muscle, the muscle that makes you more inclined to ask for more, and I struggle with it, and I'm struggling with it as we speak. So it's something I'm like, okay, I need a whole conversation on this, right? Where you're able to really just step in and not worry about that, whatever confrontation, or you can find the way to have that back and forth if you need to on a very important aspect of standing up for yourself, which is what we're talking about. And that's what makes your work so important, because if we just keep telling women be more confident or invest more without addressing the structure, without addressing the internal nuances that we've been trained on, that we've been subconsciously trained on, we're putting the burden on women to fix something that they didn't ultimately break.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. What does it actually look like to play in a rigged game, a well-rigged game, without pretending the game isn't rigged?
I think that I would have answered this question a bit differently if you'd asked me even 3 years ago. But I do think that for the first time ever, at least in, well, certainly my lifetime, but I think that we have more resources at our fingertips than ever before. You know, it used to be the barrier to entry may have been getting into the right colleges, or, you know, even going to college, or did your parents, you know, expose you to these kind of conversations around money and opportunity at country clubs and you didn't get in? So how do you cross the narrative? None of that really, in my opinion, is a barrier to entry anymore, because resources and information are everywhere. So I would say for any of us that, you know, we need to acknowledge first that just because we want things to be fair and equal doesn't mean that they are. And we can all work hard to change that. But until then, do the research, figure out what it is you want, what the people that are living the life or investing in a way that you want to emulate, what are they doing? And unlike in prior generations, you don't need a college education or access to the golf course to do that. We can do it, but you've got to want it. And that's where, again, if we're in a rigged system, you still have to advocate for yourself. You still have to do the work. There is no, silver bullet or cheat code, but there is an easier way to get the information you need to get to that end result. So advocate for yourself, research what you're wanting, and ask the people that are doing what you want to do, how they did it and how they learned to do it. And then go out there and do it.
I love that. So now I want to go into advice that we don't hear very often. And this is, you know, nice reminders, or it may be something we've never heard of, and never thought about. And now we can kind of figure out what to do from here. So, most mainstream financial advice was built around, of course, a default, a linear career, single income stream growing steadily over 40 years, no career breaks, full contribution to, some sort of life insurance or something like that. And that is not the reality that the modern woman has come into, or even come from, let's say. Career gaps for caregiving, part-time periods, business ownership without benefits, divorce, living longer in retirement with less saved. So my question for you is, what does a real wealth strategy look like when it is built around women's actual lives, not the default that we've lived through or others have lived through, and we hear about a lot?
The first thing is you need to identify what it is you're chasing and what success looks like for you. So in this same vein of information being everywhere, I think it's important that your success story is yours alone. And once you determine what that is, it allows you to then reverse engineer what that looks like. So for, let's say, somebody who says, I don't ever want to fly private or have these cars. I just want to be able to go on a few vacations a year, never look at my bank account with worry, and be able to pick up my kids from school. That is okay. Figure out what your success story looks like, and then get crystal clear around what your money is doing. People think that if the wealthy people don't pay attention to their bank accounts, and it's actually the total opposite. People that are not afraid of their money and understand that it is truly a tool, boy, girl, industry, doesn't matter. It is a tool that we all have access to. You need to understand how it's coming in, how it's going out, and what you're doing with it. And I think that in practical terms, what I like to do is tell anybody to build a spending plan versus a budget. A lot of this is just figuring out what works for you. There is no right or wrong way. But making sure that you are building a spending plan. And how you do that is you look at what your fixed expenses are, and then what is coming in. And the difference of that, let's say that number is $5,000. You want to look at that and say, how can I serve that version of myself? How do I get to her? How do I do that and pay off debt and put money aside in a reserve account? And I think that that's one of the really good things that we all need to do is understand we can't live in an or universe. It has to be and. You need to be saving and investing and paying down debt. And I think that once you do that, you are really capitalizing on our most precious commodity, and that's time. But it's allowing your money to compound for you and pay off past debt and save for the future. With that being said, I think it's also really important that you're always stretching the rubber band and finding, again, things that serve you. So within my private wealth management practice, I work almost exclusively in that arm with female business owners. And in the traditional way, we've been told, max out your retirement accounts. I challenge that because if you're an entrepreneur, that advice might not be great advice. Maxing out a solo 401k, if you're trying to grow a business, will limit your access to capital, which could limit then the way you grow and scale your company. So I think that it's really important to understand, what are you chasing? What is most important? Is it the debt? Is it paying, investing more aggressively? Is it reinvesting in your business and then building out that and universe and a spending plan to make sure that you're honoring those things? And if you're doing that, it's just numbers. It's just numbers. And you can figure out how to move the needle month after month, year after year, as long as you're paying attention to the dollars when they're coming in and not putting your head in the sand and avoiding what could be a little bit of a scary conversation if you've gotten off track.
That's right. So the next thing would be, of course, planning for the unexpected, right? And where that kind of falls or fits into that spending plan. Is that in your mind, a savings, or is that, could that be an investment that is a little bit more liquid, let's say?
It can be in an investment account. I challenge people all the time to remember that if you have a brokerage account, that is considered technically liquid money. You can usually get to it in case you need it. With that being said, I think you need to have some money that you can go to the bank and take out. And in the same breath, I think women in general are saving this emergency fund. But what emergency is $30,000? Why are we taking all of this working capital that cash is and putting it in an account where it's doing nothing? And I mean, the argument around high yield savings, yes, that should be again for savings, but we don't need a ton of money there. Let your money work for you. It's still there if you need it. It's not in a retirement account. But I would say, a conservative number, depending on what your career is, if you're the primary breadwinner, you've got kids, or, you're a business owner or on a commission-based job, then you need to have a little bit more there in case of an unexpected event. But if you are in a situation where it's consistent, let's not take 6 months of expenses and leave them on the sideline. Invest some of them conservatively, but there's no $30,000 emergency, truly.
Right. What's interesting as well, as we think about where we are today, longevity is it's huge right now. Like, people are trying to live longer, especially women, and women already live 5 to 7 years longer than men. But probably retire with 2/3 of the money that men do. Now we have more women that are either single or just choosing not to have a partner. What's one thing you wish women to know now about retirement and how they need to plan for that?
I think the most important thing when planning for retirement is to acknowledge what you want, but don't do it and you're probably not going to expect me to say this, but don't do it at the expense of today. Because I've seen, unfortunately, I just lost my dad in September. He was a very successful entrepreneur, and he kept saying, when I retire, when I retire, when I retire. And he passed unexpectedly. And that was in September, and he was set to sell the business and retire in December. And so I want everyone listening to think, you want money, and saving is important, but you don't want to sacrifice joy and little things that are important today for a future that none of us are promised. So again, it's going back to that. And don't be so focused on something that is the end goal that you miss the journey, but pay attention to it. I would say not to count on Social Security, although I do believe that it will always be there at some capacity. You also need to be prepared for any environment when it comes to taxes and liquidity. Those are things that we're not certain of. So, and also how long we'll need money. There's a lot of uncertainty there. So come up with something that makes you feel good and plan for it while enjoying your life today, is what I would say.
Yeah, I love that. And we're all about that on the Dope Living podcast. How do we create a life that's so intentional? And being intentional means finding that balance between, what you want and what feels good for you and what the future holds. So let's talk about where women actually win and how to double down. So because I think there's a version of women and wealth in the conversation that is so focused on what's wrong that I don't want to miss something powerful here. So when women do invest, we typically win. We trade less, which means we pay less in fees and avoid panic selling. We focus on long-term goals. We ask more questions before making decisions. These are not weaknesses, obviously. And they are genuinely superior investing behaviors backed by data. But here's the one thing I don't hear enough. How do women actually double down on those natural advantages?
I think the biggest thing is to trust our instinct. I think women have, and it's backed by data, that we are very intuitive and we pick up more signals and signs that we then call intuition the guys do, I think we need to pay attention to that. If there's something that you're passionate about and you feel like something's a good investment and you're a little bit nervous, but you feel like it's the right move, trust your instinct. It is a superpower. Again, I think that with our emotions, with our intuition, trusting our gut, I think that we can't lose. We are better investors when we're actually investing. And I think that the other thing that women do really well is women with more money do more good. We are, innately, we're more nurturing. And this is not obviously a negative on the boys. It's just kind of how it is. We are more nurturing and maternal. And so when women make more money, we put it in the hands of others, whether that's a cause or a family member. So I would say to double down on what you believe in, give yourself permission to chase that, trust your gut and intuition. It is there for a reason. And once you decide to do something, stay the course. Remember why you did it. Think about the emotion behind why you did it and stay the course.
I love that. And this connects to something you've talked about, the idea that women often set wealth goals around other people, funding their kids' education, supporting family, leaving something for the next generation. And that is beautiful, but does it ever get in the way of women building themselves first?
It does. And it's something that I talk about with clients often. I think it's really important that you honor the things that are important to you, not because someone is telling you to, but because it's important to you. While at the same time understanding that whether you're putting money aside for your kiddo to go to college in their name or in an education account, or in an account that serves you, the goal will be reached. So I will always make sure that if somebody is passionate about saving for someone else, do it in a way that you're benefiting from it if that thing never happens. If your kid doesn't go to college or doesn't need the money, now you have a 529 that's not going to do anything. If your parent that you think you may have to take care of, it ends up that you don't, well, now you've put money somewhere that isn't going to serve you. At the end of the day, if you're investing your money and you're consistent and steady and have a plan, do it in a way that is going to honor you, that will allow you to build true wealth, because that wealth will allow you to do all the other things that you want to do. So at the end of the day, it's like you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to make sure that you are the focus of the plan, and that version of yourself will be able to do the other things for the people that you care about. But don't do it for them. Do it in a way that you will be able to help, but they're definitely still coming in second instead of first.
Mm-hmm. So the good old put on your mask before helping others, right?
Right.
So let's talk about the hardest question. So I want to ask you something that I think takes real courage to answer, because it might not be comfortable. We've talked a lot about what the systems get wrong, and I believe every word of it. But I also think there's a version of this conversation that becomes a reason not to act, where the systematic barriers become so overwhelming that we stop where we are and wait for the world to change. And so here's an honest question. What are women still getting wrong about their own wealth? The things that are within our control, but nobody wants to say out loud.
Oh my goodness. I would say that women are still, unfortunately, getting it wrong with giving themselves permission to want what they want. I think that, there's a lot of guilt that innately comes with women and how they're planning. And I think that no matter what we say, that old adage, the world expects women to work like they don't have kids and raise their children like they don't work. Mm-hmm. And I think that we all are waiting for the world to change to catch up to it. And, we've referenced a few times there's a lot of positive change happening. But if you're waiting for the world to tell you it's okay to do something, you're going to be waiting forever. It is okay to not prioritize being a perfect business owner or a perfect mother at the same time. Work-life balance is garbage. It's all about prioritizing. Nobody is truly balanced. And I think that the longer that we wait for them to catch up to us, the ones that are missing out are us. It's okay to take a day away and say, I need to invest in going and getting a hotel room because my baby is not sleeping and I have big meetings this week and I need the time. If you're waiting for everyone to tell you that it's okay, they won't. Even when they love you, it's their own, upbringing that's going to tell them, oh, but you shouldn't be away. And I deal with that all the time. I have a client dinner or like an event tonight. And last night I had something as well. And I know that even though it's not being said, I feel guilty not being there for dinner again. And if I wait for, I don't mean to throw my mom and like my mother-in-law under the bus, but, people that went a different path, even though they would say they love what I've built, they would still say, oh, but it's 2 nights in a row. So don't wait for them to say it's okay, because they never will. Give yourself the grace to realize you have to do what's right for you, and you're not going to be perfect at it all the time.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I think, and you hit it right, you hit the nail on the head, because it's definitely something I think we all, any woman that has a lot of stuff going on in their business, in their personal lives, in their career, it's definitely a challenge when you're managing a busy calendar, a busy schedule. I know I go through it quite a bit, and I now have a productivity coach, and he tells me things like, I've got to do this, and I've got to fit all of these things in the day, but that means now I have to sacrifice this stuff with my 4-year-old. And so now I've got to figure out, I do have my own goals. So I have to kind of still prioritize those goals, but not feel like I need to spend every waking minute with her, so it's something that we just don't, we go through, and we secretly go through, and it's secretly weighing on us, but we don't have a solution for it.
No. And we will tell each other it's okay, but then to our own selves, our own, our hardest critic.
That's right. Michelle, you've brought so much. I've loved this conversation because it was so honest. It was so raw in terms of breaking kind of the usual talk about money and really trying to break down, how do we balance what we go through on a day-to-day basis with who we are, and how we should manage our relationship with money, and how we should think about money. So I love that conversation for us and for the audience, and for everyone listening who wants to learn more about you. Can you tell us a little bit about you and how we can find you?
Yeah. So I am based in Florida, but I have clients all over the country. I have a consulting and wealth management side of my business. And then I have Women in Wealth, and that can be found on Instagram, women_in_wealth, or on the website, womeninwealth.co. And then I also have a podcast called Talk Wealthy to Me that is on all of the streaming platforms. And we're having great conversations just like this every single week.
That's awesome. So if anybody wants to hear more about, or just kind of have all that talk kind of come in on a consistent basis, definitely check out Michelle's podcast, Talk to Me Wealthy. So as always on Dope Living, we do close with an affirmation because the words that we say are quite powerful. So we want to ensure that what we say, as it relates to what we've heard and learned today, can stick with us. So today's affirmation is: the wealth gap is real, and so is my power to close it. I release the story that I am bad with money. I was never bad with money. I was underserved, underinformed, and underestimated. And I am done waiting for a system that wasn't built for me to invite me in. I am building my own table. I invest in myself. I protect what I build. I think long term because I am playing for generations. Wealth is not a reward for a perfect woman. It is a tool, and I am learning how to use it. I belong here. I stay here. I win here. And that is your truth. Write it down, share it, and always come back to it.
Oh, I
Thank
love
you so much. Thank you. Again, I love this. There's such a powerful conversation.
Oh, me too.
And you know where to find us for the next episode. Michelle, we are so grateful that you came on and imparted so much wisdom. So, everyone continue to keep building, keep dreaming, keep doing, and we will see you next time. Have a good one.